Hello, I'm Merrick and welcome to my first video. So today I'm going to be painting up this little roulette guard Grundback blaster. Just a cute little chicken walker, pretty basic. Gonna go through kind of a step-by-step of what a nice decent tabletop would look like, base coat and maybe a highlight or two, and then kind of gradually increasing complexity from there. So we might go into a little bit of blending on the armor and possibly just how to maybe make the metal shine a little bit more. So to start off, I have him primed up as a nice gray. This is kind of the gray that I'm going for, natural gray by Pro Acrylic. So just to get started, we're probably going to, so we have him base coated gray. That's the majority of what his color is going to be. And then we're gonna take some metallics and highlight all this trim along the sides. So let's see if I can get it to the camera. We're gonna get all this trim off to the sides, all the rivets and that sort of thing as a nice bronze, as well as his boiler and maybe some of the joints as well. So I like the Retributor armor here. This is by Citadel. So we're gonna shake up and grab a little bit of this. Toss out my wet palette here. With wet palettes, you want to be a little careful with metallics, as it separates, and thin down metals are not always the ideal. So from there, we're just gonna start going for it. All right, so with that, we got the first little bit of trim done. I need a paper towel. So that first trim is done. And so I am, you'll find out soon, a very messy painter. So I've kind of gone over like a little bit there and got some gold here. A fun little technique, if it hasn't dried quite yet, let me see if I can do it. Add a little water to your brush. Looks like it's a little too dried for that. But if it's not quite dried yet, you can add some water to your brush, kind of massage the area, and the paint oftentimes will lift off, which is very nice. Okay, so now we've finished with the trim along the outside. I am going to now add a little bit of gray in my palette to fix up any of those tiny little mistakes I'm doing with the gold, and filling in any gaps where my primer didn't set or land. So fixed up those little spots, and then there is a little bit of trim down here, and I think I'm gonna do his undercarriage as well in that color. Okay, so we'll hit undercarriage way down here. It's a little bit hard to get. I think I'm able to. For this one in particular, there's a little access under his backside that makes it a little easy, which is nice. So then for these particular colors, I also like to hit it with a black wash here in a couple minutes once it's done drying. And that will fill in all the gaps, create a little bit more of a nicer finish on it, as opposed to it being so overly bright. Undercarriage done. Now we're gonna hit the smokestack here. Same gold. Just go all the way around that. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Okay, so rim is now done. I'm going to do a little gun plate up here that is also the same texture, I think, as his underbelly in that same gold. Don't worry about messing up too much on these because we're gonna hit the rest of the areas with a silver. So like all of this area will be silver. So don't worry about too much. I think the little grate here on his butt might be fun to do gold too, so we'll hit that as well. And then any other spots that you think would look good in the gold, go for those. I think I'm gonna leave it basically there. So the trim on these is a little tough to get, and it looks a little off if you don't color it. I'm gonna try go around with that. So we'll hit all these areas. For kind of under the mold areas, we'll hit like that. I think we'll do that color. So I'm gonna go back over, clean up any gray areas that I messed up. And then our next color is gonna be a lovely gray. We'll see where that gets us from there. So now we've finished up what I would think is a good spot for all the gold trim. I'm gonna now add some silver to our palette. So I'm using war paint plate metal. This is a little bit of a brighter one than maybe a gunmetal, but I'm choosing the brighter because it reflects, and we're gonna wash it, so it's gonna dull it down a little bit. But I think the brighter gives us better options for doing what we want after with it, instead of just going with a dark one already and not being able to do as much. So we're now just gonna pick out all the areas we want silver. And with a gray undercoat like I have here, it's not going to be quite as dark in terms of where the shadows are coming from, and the reflections might not look quite as good. So if you want to level up the look a little bit, what I would recommend doing is putting a black base coat under anything that is going to be silver, because that helps the reflections a lot and makes it look a lot cleaner. You don't have to, any color technically works, but the metal reflects a lot better and looks just a little bit better that way. I'm not doing that today because I don't want to spend the extra time to do that for this particular tutorial, but in another one I can show that off. So that's his boiler backside done. We'll do the smokestack, this silver as well. And I think the little chimney here as well. Whatever you want to call that. We'll do the rims of this, but then we'll put some black in here later and make that look a little more like a tunnel as opposed to a divot, because it is a tube. Get a little more silver on the palette. So that smokestack is done. I'm not too worried about that like crease in here, because that's going to be covered up with our wash. I'm gonna now do his little turret. Another fun thing, if you use black as the base coat, is if you were to kind of light or even heavily dry brush it, then you could, I don't know if you can see that in the camera here, but you'll get like little flecks of whatever the undercoat is. And with black, that makes it look a lot more like a reflection, or like a pointed light, I should say. And so I think that is a little bit better of a look for silver. Go up to a bit bigger of a brush now that I'm not too worried about everything around it. Just the whole area. So I have a bunch of these brushes. They're privateer press, actually. It's kind of funny. Old wedge brushes that I use for dry brushing. Wedge brushes I'm really bad at keeping clean, as I'm sure many are, and so I end up with a lot of very messed up wedges, which are great for dry brushing. So don't throw away your ruined brushes, use them for other things. I also like using ruined brushes for things like glue or basing. They're really good for that too. I'm gonna hit the rest of his legs with this silver, all little hydraulic mechanical components. If you really want to get into that underside and do that too, you can. I'm not gonna worry about it. Gray and silver are pretty close for me. Now, you'll notice with this model, the silver looks nice, and there's the gray, but there's not a lot of contrast with that. And that's okay, because we're gonna give it some more contrast later. So we're just base coating right now, and that's actually fine for a tabletop look if you just want to get some basic colors down. So, like, this is kind of what I would expect for someone who's got a large armory and doesn't have a ton of time to paint. This took like, what, 15-20 minutes max? More like 10 or 15 minutes to get a nice clean base coat of all these colors. And that is totally valid for most tabletops and tournaments. I believe most do require painting at least like 3 decent looking colors. 3 colors, so. Yeah. So that is like not a terrible looking start. I'd say like that's the bare minimum if you wanted to paint this little guy, and what you should paint him to, I think. Just getting a little bit of color in there, making him look more than just like gray blob. So now that we have kind of our primary base coats, I'm actually gonna hit a little sight on the top with a little silver before we continue. Okay, feeling pretty good about that. So now that we have this, I'm going to, well, obviously make sure to let it dry first, but then after that, we're gonna go hit it with a wash. I'm actually going to make my own wash, but just as easily you could use a Null and Shade or anything else. Making your own wash is a little bit nicer, in my opinion, as you get to control the intensity of the wash itself. For example, I'm using Army Painter's Matte Black for this wash, so I'm gonna toss a bunch in this corner. And then I'm gonna grab a bunch of water. So then, if you can see what I'm doing here, I'm taking the paint on one side and the water on another, and I'm gonna just kind of take a spot and mix it here. That way I don't ruin the entire pool of it. I'm just making a little bit of a specific area with all the thinner paint. You could also do this with paint thinner. Water's always worked for me, so I've never bothered with too much thinner. So once you do that, just apply it fairly liberally everywhere. If it pools, that's okay if you want it to pool there. Main way to tell is if it starts leaking onto other areas that you don't want that color. So for me, like seeing it pool here a little bit and then over here is fine. I just want to make sure it doesn't like creep up the side here and like get into areas I don't want it. So some people will just wash everything, and that's a great, very, very early beginner tip of just wash everything. Washes are the magic touch for a beginner. But if you just take a couple seconds to choose where to put the wash, you can make something look significantly better, just a couple extra minutes. So, for example, I'm not getting any on the gray, and that's on purpose. So I want all of the, so I'm gonna get a black wash. I think I'm gonna do a black wash on the silver, and then I'm probably going to do a little bit of a greener, earth shady green, or acetone camo shade. I'm gonna do that on the armor as a contrast to kind of bring it down a little bit. So now I'm gonna hit the front here. So don't avoid washes because they're known as a kind of beginner trick, but use them in the way they were designed, or they were meant to be used. That's as a way to get in the crevices of something and kind of tone it down or tone it up, depending on what you're doing. So I use them for darkening, and that's very helpful. You just don't want to overdo them everywhere. So they can make a bad model look okay, but they can't make a okay model look great. If that makes any sense. Okay, so that's all the silver done. I'm gonna leave it at that. Now I'm gonna nab me some camo shade. This is going to be an example of my Citadel wash, like a proper Citadel wash. We're gonna apply that very thinly over top the trim, or anything that's gonna be gold. That will get in the creases, and so yellow and green, depending on the tones, like an orange and green or a yellow and green, sit fairly, just like an orange and green tend to be pretty close on the color wheel. They contrast really well. So like, instead of just black, because black looks nice, not over gold. This gives it a little bit more of a body tone. So now if you see, I accidentally went over a little bit. We'll use that technique I talked about earlier. Just clear your brush, wet it, and then with washes it makes it way nicer to do that. But then you just pull it up. You add a little water in the area, dry your brush off a bit. Not entirely, because you do still want the water on there, and then just pull it up. Nice and simple like that. Now you do have to be careful, because in that area, if you do put water or a wash there, that whole area is now going to be very wet for a while. And so I have often forgotten that something is wet and reapplied paint and it go everywhere. So you want to make sure that the area is relatively dry and not going to suck the paint, because paint tends to be attracted to water, or it will kind of equal itself out in water. It's not just gonna stay. I'll toss a little bit on that top, make it give it a little bit of a color shift. So now, with where we're at now, you can kind of tell with the wash starting to dry already, it's kind of giving a bit more of a basey kind of color. So now at this point, again, this is kind of that next step. Great piece for a tabletop, but next step, we're gonna take those, I forgot the top here, oops. We're gonna finish making sure that looks good. Then we'll move on to the next step. So at this point, we're gonna now take all those colors that we just darkened, re-highlight them. So for example, we might want to do the rivets. We want to make sure our paint is not too thin, because the longer it sits on the palette, the thinner it's going to get. So we want to just kind of touch up certain areas, places where light is going to shine more, edges, kind of do an edge highlight, that sort of thing, if that makes sense. So we end up with more than just dark gunmetal. You can see the parts where maybe they're worn from use, or a lot of places that have been touched and metal has been jammed or pushed. Or maybe around the smokestack it makes it look splotchy, like ash has been sitting there for a while. I'm also going to add a little bit of silver to these nuts. That to dry. While I'm waiting, I'm gonna start working on the gray. So the gray right now is at a good spot, but we can make it a little better. So I'm gonna take our base layer, add a little bit more here. We're gonna mix it with a tiny little bit of black. So what black is gonna do is make it a little darker, obviously. And with that, we're going to outline the gray. We're going to give a little definition. I'm going to take a finer one. This is a Pro Sable from Monument. I really like this brush. It's very good at what it does. So we're also going to thin it down a little bit so it hits those crevices a little better. Just going to get a nice dark tone. And then I'm going to just gently outline the entire thing. Now, I have shaky hands. So, and if you too have shaky hands, don't worry about getting the line super thin. what you can do is go back over it with that original gray and then like kind of shade out to in and fix the lines. So I'm gonna hit this here. Notice I did a pretty thick line there, so we're gonna go back to that later and clean that up with the base color. So on their feet, you could also maybe add a little bit of a shadow. Since this is a darker color, just take it and add a little bit of a shadow in here. Also maybe thin it down a little bit. Toss some in the recesses here. Maybe not an edge highlight, but maybe in the recesses where it is gonna look more like a proper shadow. So you got that. We'll clean that up later. So we're just getting the color in there first. Toss some in these corners here. Doesn't have to be perfect. It don't have to be like shadow realistic. Just some fun little texture changes that help give some definition to what is otherwise a very flat surface. Perhaps peeling metal or peeling paint or something like that, where it's just a little bit of a texture change. Now that's starting to look a little better. Now this is an awkward phase of we are now going to go back over it with the original color, clear in or fix up all those original spots that we may have overdone it. You could actually even do this within a thinner color or a very thin down color and give it a bit of a gradient if you wanted to. I think I'm gonna do the gradient, just a little bit of one. Since the paint's a little bit thinner on my palette, it's gonna require a couple layers anyway. Now we can clean up the shadows. So if you actually grab and drag straight down and add a little bit of a curve, you can get a pretty natural looking shadow. Given that most light tends to start from top to bottom. Just fill in the sides a little bit, you can get a nice little bit there. I think I overdid it slightly on that one. With this one we can try again. So we've now kind of outlined the whole area. So getting a good looking start to the model. So now at this point, now that the rest of the kind of metallics have dried, I'm actually first going to toss some black into here to give the illusion of burning or smoke stacking. And then we're going to kind of brighten up certain parts of the gold. So, and silver. So we're gonna take the rivets, we're gonna toss a little bit on top of there, do a little edge highlighting. This will just add a little bit more contrast. And again, and like a large part of mini painting is contrast, to be honest. Getting stuff to pop on something small is very important. Just take your time and add little bits of highlighting here and there. Hit as many of the rivets as you feel necessary. If this was on a bigger model, you could even then dry brush it after this, I think might be helpful. So now we're gonna match that with the silver. All right, so that's now looking pretty good. I think now we're gonna do the eyes. So eyes are kind of fun. We're going to take a very dense white wash and we're going to gently put it in there as to not hit anywhere else, but the wash will give a little bit of an evidence of like a glow or something like that, which will be nice. Add some water, get a nice thick wash going. Basically want to get it down to like very thick milk, or like maybe a thin down milk actually. Reason for that is because it will still sop into the areas we want it, but won't go too much further. What we can do now is just kind of wash the area. Very thick wash like that. A little outside of that, but thankfully it's still wet, so we're just gonna pick that back up. Need massage it for a minute and it'll come right back up. Warmer and drier day today, so the paint is drying a bit faster than I'd like. While we're waiting for that to dry, we can actually take a little bit of thinned down black, these smokestacks. Okay, fix a little bit of that silver up top here. Looking pretty good. So now, while we're waiting for that white to dry, I'm actually going to edge highlight. So taking that white we actually just made, or got out, we're going to take a little bit of the gray, maybe a lot bit of the gray, and just add in a bit of white. So we're going to make a brighter version, kind of doing the opposite of what we were doing with the black earlier. The reason for this, again, is more contrast. So now, you can start picking out details on the model edges primarily, as this is an edge highlight. If you want to, you can also pick out the rivets maybe with this color on his back here. Doesn't have a ton of areas to edge highlight, so should be a pretty quick deal. Hit the head. His little sharp nose. And what body equivalent he has. And also maybe add some like shine dots on top of certain rounded areas. Right here, I'm just kind of making hashes in a rounded area to simulate some shine. And then on the edges here is actually where non-metallic metal starts becoming like the technique you would do. Is if you're layering and going from a darker area over to a lighter area, you can kind of see that sheen start happening. If you wanted to, you could even then just add some through here, kind of give a bit more of a contrasty look. hit all the kind of raised areas with it. This is like a good chunk thinned down compared to most of the other paint we've been using. Mostly just to add some extra texture in here, make it not look quite so flat. So now, with that done, the white has dried at this point. And now we're kind of good to start hitting those eyes. So a couple ways you can do this. Either do a contrast, so I have stuff like speed paints or Citadel contrast colors, where both of these would work, but I think I'm gonna go probably with the contrast. We'll do a contrast today. How about that? So contrasts don't last very long in a wet palette. Start kind of breaking down or separating a lot quicker since they're so thin. So you want to tend to want to use them pretty quick. So the white helps give the contrast a background to go off of. And if you go a little too much, you can just kind of wipe off the excess. But it will make you look like you're bleeding. You can just take your wet brush and get in there and sop it all up. I do have a bit of a problem using contrast just because they're so erratic. They're, at least for me, harder to control. They're really good at messing up your beautiful paint jobs you just did. So use them sparingly, or if you got really good control and brush control, or you're really good at loading your brush, then by all means go for it, but not my favorite. So outside of the parts that we kind of leaked on, it's looking good. You can always go back in there and touch her up. Contrasts also have a tendency to immediately mix with any paint that you're trying to put in. So unless it's completely dry, you can stain the area, which can be actually quite nice because it actually creates the perfect area to wet blend. But actually we're gonna do a little bit of that. Happy accidents. So you can see, we now have a little bit of a blend on either side that kind of looks almost like an OSL, which is nice. So yeah, that's kind of it for this guy so far. Some other ways to improve or go beyond might be not using a metallic and instead using a non-metallic metal. So going from a black to a white gradient with shadows. Obviously that's a lot higher level. But I think this guy looks pretty good for what it is. So thank you for watching. See you later.